this blog. All right, so we're going to talk about how you capture. This is like a best practice. I should put a big rubber stamp across that says every team should probably have some place where they can communicate what their application looks like across their software life cycle. And maybe sometimes it's just a bunch of links off to places where you can see stuff. So in this case, we're going to look at a super simple application. It's it's an application with multiple components. It's going to have two services. One's a web service, and I didn't put the load balancer on here. I'm sorry. And it's going to have a web service that's got a DNS entry, and it's sitting in its own Kubernetes namespace. It's got a set of secrets. Whatever is brought in on the web endpoint, which isn't documented here, it's going to push off to a message queue, and then there's a second app that will read from the message queue and write to a database. It runs in its own namespace. It's got its own service name, and it's got its own set of secrets. The secrets could be shared, but in this case, we're going to assume they're not. We're going to isolate all our service secrets from each other, and they might be done by two different teams or the same team. And then for the messaging, we have some things we need to know. And the goal here is really to capture the things that change by environment. And actually, I have another section below for the things that don't change by environment, and we'll look at that. So in this case, what we're going to look at is every piece on here should have a section where you define what it does. So we're going to have the Kubernetes cluster, which we're going to have the cluster name and a linked off in the admin portal. I'm kind of assuming you're doing all this in the cloud, because if you're on-prem, we're just going to cry a crocodile tear for you. And then there's a link here for metrics. So we have a link to the cluster itself and a link to the metrics. If we have logs going somewhere other than the metrics, we'd have another box here, but I didn't want to complicate this diagram any more than it is. For the web app that captures this, we have a DNS entry. There should be another column here for the load balancer. And then we've got the Kubernetes namespace, the key store name with a link off to the key store. And this could be a key store, key vault, depends on the cloud you're in. I don't know what Google's is. And then we have a link off to the metrics dashboard for that. I am a big proponent of having metrics. The other one here might be logging. There might be another column here for logging. And then if we have a health check, we'll have a URL off to that. In some cases, metrics and logging are in the same place, so whatever. And then we have the event processor, which is the other one here. So some of the properties are very similar. It's going to have a namespace for Kubernetes. It's going to have its own key store with a link off to that key store. It's going to have a database secret name inside that key store. So we're going to assume we're not using cloud credentials here, that we actually still needed to manage credentials, which is unfortunate. But it could be our AD role, or it could be a secret. It may be that we do some pass-through thing, in which case we wouldn't need this, but I put this here just in case. And then, as with every other component, I have links off for the metrics and for the health check. And then we're going to go into this database. And so this event processor talks to the database, and we want to know which schema this event processor is using in that database. So we'll document that here. And let's look at all the other components. So there's two others here. And then there's the event broker itself. And the event broker's got a cluster. It's got a schema registration. So a lot of times when you have this, you'll register the schema that you're going in there. And so this is the schema registry. That should say registry instead. And then we might put the TTL in here. I actually think this belongs somewhere else. Anything related to the individual topics might go in a topic table, but that's really up to you. And then on the database, what we've got is the DNS entry for the database, where the admin portal is for it, and where the metrics dashboard. So that's that. I feel like, what you want to put in here is going to vary. And so for this simple app, I ended up with this many columns. The other thing I want to manage is identities. So what we have is we have identities and roles, the role that identity is going to play. So in this case, for AKS, we're going to have a cluster identity that runs the cluster. That's the admin cluster. For the web app, we're going to have some cloud identity for this service. And then that web app is going to play some role in the messaging, right? So the identity we're going to use is whatever. And then the role it's going to play in the messaging server so that it can do read and write. And then you might put another column here for read write, right? But it's going to be some role. Actually, this one, if it's cloud-based, will be like write, manage, whatever. So this identity has this role in the messaging, right? And then the event processor is going to have its own cloud identity, this section, and it's that cloud identity or the key vault identity. Actually, you know what? Let's do another one here. Let's do the database identity insert column, and we'll do DB identity. And that might be the same as the cloud identity, and then it's going to log in as that database. It's going to have that permission in the database against the schema that was configured above. That's pretty much it. The last one is actually this environmental constants. There are going to be some things that are constant across environments. And so it'll be like the Kubernetes service name in the console. The event topic might be the same across all of them, or it might be different, in which case we'd put it upstairs or somewhere else. The secret name would be the same across all environments. So you'll notice up above here, I didn't capture the secret names. And that's because the secrets are typically constant across environments. And then the secret name in the key store for the database would be the same. So we would always create a key vault or a key store for each environment, but we would use the same secret names. So that's it. I did it looks super simple, but I think this is like version, on the one I did for work recently, I'm on version 78. So if we were to look up here at history, so I can see kind of how many versions I did this, it's page history. Well, thinking this simple app through, I did 12 versions of this document. So that's it. You should try creating an environment matrix definition, and I think you may end up breaking out the permissions, but you should try that for your application and see how well it helps you communicate. Have a great day.